Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Steven Melendez, and I'm going to be bringing you the latest and greatest in basketball news from around the NBA. Welcome back, everyone, to your favorite basketball podcast. We've got a lot to get into. We got the playoffs right around the corner. We had a legendary Hall of Fame class get inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame, and it's exciting stuff going on right now, man. I mean, I'm just like, I got the goosebumps coming up, man, just thinking about these playoffs, the play-in tournament, all the exciting matchups that we got. We still got some games juggling around. We're going to be talking about that as well to decide seedings. Like, there's a lot going on in the NBA right now with still just only 2 games remaining. Some teams only have 1. And that's one of the things I love the most about the NBA. It never ceases to give you suspense, and that's what we got right now. We got a lot of teams still fighting for where they're going to be in the playoffs, which teams they're going to be taking on in the first round, which side of the bracket are they going to be on. There's a lot of jostling going around. Even my Miami Heat are, at the moment, taking on the Milwaukee Bucks to try to hold on to a 5th seed, but it doesn't look too good. They don't even have Jimmy Butler playing, and the Bucks have brought on the full force to try to take on the Heat and play them in the first round. So we'll see how that goes. But let's just get right into what we're going to be discussing in today's show. Kind of already talked about it a little bit. But in the first segment, we're going to be talking about the legendary 2020 Hall of Fame class. Kobe Bryant, Tim the Fundamental Duncan, Kevin Big Ticket Garnett, and many, many more. We're going to get into all of those inductees of the legendary 2020 Hall of Fame class in that first segment. The NBA play-in tournament. I'm going to be giving you my predictions for that play-in tournament in the second segment. We got a lot of very interesting matchups, of course. All these teams fought very hard to make it into this exclusive tournament. Well, I don't want to say exclusive, but you know what I mean. Like, they're the ones that made it there or lost enough to get there, for some, for sure. And third segment, I want to talk biggest games before the playoffs. Like, there's still a lot, like I said, man, there's still a lot of games that are being played that can decide who's going to make it in the play-in. So it's a lot of games going on. I want to talk about each of those, what they mean for each team, whether they got to win, lose, what they would prefer in those games. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the third segment. And then the fourth segment, I know I did something pretty much just like this about 2 episodes ago, but I'm going to be doing a top 10 teams heading into the playoffs because I feel like there's a lot of teams that are really gearing up and playing their best basketball right now. And I want to do something like, I don't want to talk about like just a normal power rankings where I just list the top 10 teams in the NBA this season. That's not what I'm doing. I'm talking about which teams have really been turning it up over the last week, 2 weeks before the playoffs start. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in that last segment. So without further ado, let's get started with the legendary 2020 Hall of Fame class. I mean, the names on this list, and of course, I'm not, huge on college basketball, so I didn't know much about coaches like Mulkey, Barbara Stevens, Eddie Sutton. Patrick Baumann of the FIBA executive, I didn't know much about him, but of course I did my research, wanted to look up to see, why are these people in the Hall of Fame? And man, it is a mega class, of course, headlined by the big three of Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, and Kevin Garnett. And of course, cannot forget the legendary Tamika Catchings as well of the WNBA, making it into the Hall of Fame as well. And you also got Rudy Tom Janovich, player, coach, executive. You got a little bit of everything there. He's had a legendary career in the NBA. And we're going to be talking about all these players. I was kind of wondering, am I going to just start off with the big heavy hitters and then I'll just trickle down and talk about the other ones, that I'm not too familiar with? And you know what? Yeah, let's do it. I mean, number one I want to talk about is Kobe Bean Bryant. Of course, tragic, him being taken away from everyone way too soon. He had so much more to give after basketball, and we were seeing a lot of it. Even in those, 2 years that he was retired, we were already seeing what Kobe Bean Bryant was going to be bringing to the world after basketball. I mean, the man is a legend, one of the best players of all time, and it's only right to put him into the Hall of Fame already. He deserves it. 18-time All-Star, 2-time scoring champ, 5-time NBA champion, 15-time All-NBA, 12-time All-Defense, and it just goes on and on with his accolades. Even an MVP award in 2007, 2008. Many say that that's not enough for a guy of Kobe Bryant's caliber, which I absolutely agree. I mean, the man is one of the best players of all time. Is the face of the NBA at post Michael Jordan era, and it's just, he brought so much to the games, brought so much to, a lot of young players, watching him and looking up to him as they were growing up. And a lot of those players are in the NBA today. And they talked about guys like Kyrie Irving, Damian Lillard, LeBron James, of course, Kevin Durant. You could pretty much every single player in the NBA right now were in some way or form inspired by Kobe Bryant, because of his work ethic, his will to want to win. It just all was so evident every single time he stepped out on that court. And like I said, man, it just hurts. It obviously hurt when it happened, and it took a while for things to just kind of, get relatively back to normal. Even though I'm a Miami Heat fan, I'm not even a Los Angeles Lakers fan. But all in all, I am a basketball fan. And when you lose someone as big as that, and it obviously doesn't matter, of course, the tragic deaths of everybody that was there. But, of course, Kobe Bryant touched all of our hearts throughout his, 20, how long would he play? How many seasons? How are you not going to tell me here? Are you going to make me count? Oh, come on. No, I'm not. No, 20 years. There you go. Okay, I saw it. In the 20 years that he played in the NBA, he touched everyone's hearts in some way, shape, or form, whether it was us bashing him for being a ball hog or, eventually, people obviously gushing over him and his incredible ability to do whatever you needed on the court. And it's just, he was so much fun to watch, obviously super annoying to watch also because he was just so good. And I remember those years when D Wade was, finally considered one of the best players in the NBA. I mean, it happened kind of early. Third year in the NBA, he already won a championship. But, he was considered in that upper echelon. And there were so many times him and Kobe would have some, really good battles. But most of the time, Kobe would come out on top. Because I know when I talk about all-time shooting guards list, I never put D Wade over Kobe. I'm not that blinded to think that Kobe is worse than Dwayne Wade. I'm just not. It was so fun to watch those two battle it out time and time again. Kobe, that buzzer beater in Los Angeles off the glass, and the three-pointer. I'm sure everyone knows that one over D Wade, and then D Wade even tributing to him, after he made that kind of same type of shot against the Warriors. I believe it was his second to last season or his last season. It was one of those. And it's hard to really put into words how much Kobe Bryant means to the game of basketball, to everybody who's associated with it, because, I mean, it's just, he's that good, man, the Black Mamba, and he was that great of a competitor, and, you know, and that's how he touched so many players, you know, just hearts. He was always competing, always trying his hardest, and that earned him the respect of so many guys. And, of course, going out there and showing it as well. I mean, what? Can we talk about some of his ridiculous stat lines? I mean, 35 points a game in his 2005-2006 season. Played 80 games, 35 points a game. Absolutely ridiculous. I don't think no one has averaged that many points per game since and then he followed that up with a 31.6 point per game season right after that. Didn't average less than 25 points a game the next 6 seasons and was just a monster. I mean, obviously after that he had some the Achilles problem and then of course the 60-point game he had at the end to just kind of cap off his career the only way Kobe Bryant can. And just all in all, you appreciate everything that he brought to the game, you know, and you just gotta send your respects, man. The guy was a baller, one of the best players of all time. I'm like borderline putting him top 10. The thing is, there's so many great players out there. Maybe I'll do something like that later on, another episode, but he's borderline. Like, he might make it into my top 10, like 10th or 9th. He's like right there. Because, I mean, yeah, the guy was just that good. So, Kobe Bean Bryant, finally a Hall of Famer, well-deserved, and, you know, rest in peace, man. Next, we got Tim Duncan, the big fundamental. I mean, this guy was just as consistent as they come. I mean, nobody, and I mean nobody, I don't care who you put up there, nobody was as consistently successful as Tim Duncan over their entire careers. Like, Tim Duncan won won championships in 3 separate decades. 3 separate decades. He became an all-star even in his second to last season, and he was an all-star in his rookie season. The man was just always a baller. And something that I didn't realize about him, not only is he a 15-time all-star, 5-time NBA champion, 15-time All-NBA, but how did I forget that this man was also a ridiculous 15-time All-Defensive Team? How did I forget that? On top of 2-time MVP, 3-time Finals MVP. I mean, it's the stats, the accolades are absolutely ridiculous. And I actually recently saw an article that talked about Tim Duncan's case for the greatest player of all time. Now, when I was looking at that, I was like, I don't know about greatest of all time. But when you really think about it, like, when I said what I said just now, that nobody has had the same sustained success over this kind of period of time, this man played, 18, 19 seasons? Nobody was as successful throughout their entire career as Tim Duncan was. Nobody. So there is a case there. Because, I mean, not only was he successful, but he was he was the key piece to that success. I mean, there is no other way to put it. And to win 5 championships, man, you're up there with the greats. And not only was he one of the most sound players in the post offensively, but 15-time all-defensive team. He led those Spurs teams to some of the best defensive seasons that probably you'll ever see. And the fact that he also played all 19 seasons with the same team, same as Kobe Bryant, it was obviously huge as well to play. And he literally launched the Spurs into a different stratosphere. They are now considered one of the best organizations in basketball. And a lot of that has to do with what Tim Duncan was consistently giving them season in, season out. Obviously, you got to give that organization credit for keeping him there and keeping him there with that big 3 of Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. That was huge. Bringing Kawhi Leonard after, making it like a semi-big 4, and then winning that title over the Heat, which they really, really wanted, which you couldn't, of course. I mean, they're that good. They were that good. So, even and honestly, even later in his career, the man was still balling, man. He was almost averaging a double-double every single season. Of course, his first, was it 1, 2, 3, am I really going to do this? I guess first 13 seasons, this man averaged a double-double. And then he obviously started going down a bit. I mean, he was starting getting up there in age, 34, 35. And he started going, the stats started going down a bit. 13 points and 9 rebounds. But he was still, right there. And he had that one season that was just, because I still remember it, that 2012-2013 season when he it kind of looked like he was on the downslide. People were like, is this the end of Tim Duncan? He comes out and puts up 18 points a game, almost 10, just under 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2.7 blocks in 69 games that year. I mean, my mind was absolutely blown when I saw that year, because it was that was his 36th age season, 36. And at that point, he was already, his last 2 seasons were 13 points a game and 15 points a game on 9 rebounds a game, under 2 blocks a game. So you're figuring out, this man, that's it. The reign of Tim Duncan is over. No siree. He's got a little bit more in the tank, and he brought it out in that season. It's just absolutely crazy that this man was able to do that. I remember those battles he had, those back-to-back years against my Miami Heat, and it was tough, man. It was very tough. I was, always at the edge of my seat because that team was so good, and Tim Duncan was so incredibly sound and would always cause problems for Chris Bosh. I remember, Chris Bosh had nothing on Tim Duncan. Absolutely nothing. It was end game from the minute the tip-off happened. And, obviously you wish Chris Bosh would have been able to do a little bit more in that 2014 finals. But at the same time, you cannot deny the greatness that is Tim Duncan, one of the best players of all time, one of the top 2-3 power forwards of all time. I don't know, man. When I'm thinking GOAT case, it's man, you're putting them up there against guys like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and sure, if you're talking obviously full career, which, of course you are, he has a case. He certainly has a case. But it's just, man, dude, what a career for him to have, to even be in that discussion, man, because there's not a lot of bigs that are in that discussion to be one of the best players of all time. Shaq had some thoughts, but he kind of took a little dip once he left the Lakers, even though he was still a great player, but it's just Tim Duncan, man. So much respect to Tim Duncan. Also, love his hairstyle now with the, I don't know what you got, the braids or the dreads, however you call it, but I'm absolutely loving that style. Loving it. Keep it forever, Tim Duncan. You look great. So, Tim Duncan, everybody. Hall of Famer. Next, we got Kevin Garnett, the big ticket. This guy changed the league for bigs. The handles, his guard-like skills at the size that he was, 6'11", the man was faster than some guards, more athletic than pretty much anybody in the league when he was playing. One of the first players to come out as from high school, and man, what a career he had. 15-time All-Star, 4-time rebounding champion, won the championship in 2008 with the Celtics. He was a 9-time All-NBA player, 12-time All-Defensive Team. He won the Defensive Player of the Year in 2008 and the MVP in 2003-2004 for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And that's who he was that's who he was with for most of his career. The guy was absolutely killing it his last 4 years in Minnesota, averaging 23 points a game and 13 rebounds, which is just absolutely ridiculous to go with about 5 assists a game. He was doing a little bit of everything. He's really it's kind of like the player that I'm expecting Bam Adebayo to turn into. That do-it-all center that can, handle it like a guard, but be as athletic as needed to cover 1 through 5. That's who Kevin Garnett was. He was that dominant of a player. And then and also it's the attitude. Not only did he have the skill, but he had that attitude to or I guess I should say it all the way around. Like, he had that crazy mentality to just, he wanted to beat you and make you look bad doing it. And obviously, when you have that kind of personality, you need to have the skill to back it up. Obviously, he had the skill, but it was just so much fun watching him do all those little things that he does to get people just so upset. Like, there was one move specifically that I remembered watching him do so many times against my Miami Heat, and I'm sure he was doing that against everybody, but like, when a player gets like up in his like body to like, make sure that he doesn't get anywhere, and, just playing tight defense, Kevin Garnett would put his hands down to his side and then lift them up, to put his hands up in the air. But as they're going up, he made sure that it would hit the other player in the face. Just like a little, but I'm not doing anything. I'm having my hands up. Man, what a crafty, sly guy, man. It was just, he was so much fun to watch. And then averaging, over one steal, one block a game, pretty much almost 2 blocks a game almost every other season. So it's like, man, the guy was just such a monster. And then when he joined that Boston Celtics team, he was, even though Paul Pierce was obviously, the leader, kind of like when LeBron James came to the Heat, everyone knew it was still D Wade's team because he's been that Miami guy. But so obviously Paul Pierce was that Boston Celtics legend, but Kevin Garnett came in and you automatically knew he was the best player on that team. There was no doubts about it. Paul Pierce was great, but he was not Kevin Garnett. And that's ultimately what really elevated his career when he was able to join that Celtics team in stride, win the championship in that first season. Obviously, they weren't able to win it again. I feel like they certainly could have. But of course, at that point, they were already on the wrong side of 30. But he was still great, man. I mean, his stats went down a bit because he had to, share the load, But that first season, he was 19 points, 9 rebounds, over a steal, over a block a game, 3.4 assists. The guy was still consistently very solid. Of course, then he went to Brooklyn, then got traded to Minnesota for his last few years, which was kind of a great, round, circle thing where he kind of came back to the team that drafted him. And it was just a legendary career of Kevin Garnett, man. A pain in my side whenever he would go up against my Miami Heat and all those showdowns they had with the Boston Celtics. And it was, I just really wish that I would have been like, a big fan in his earlier years, like 2002, 2001, 2000, even like 2003 to 2006. Like, he was still, a crazy monster. And I just wasn't watching all of the NBA at that time. I was pretty much just primarily a Miami Heat fan, so I'd watch, my occasional Miami Heat game and be like, oh, Miami Heat, but I was never, like a full-on NBA fan like I am now, where I'm watching, all the players and keeping track of, how are they doing this season. I wish I could have been like that back then, because I would have been able to witness some greatness, some Hall of Fame talent, absolutely deserved. And he caps off that big 3 of this Hall of Fame class. But there are still some absolutely incredible talents throughout this inductee list. We got Tamika Catchings from the WNBA. She was an MVP, 10-time All-Star. She was also a 4-time Olympic gold medalist. I mean, she had a great career, averaged, 16 points, 7 rebounds, 3.3 assists a game. And, I mean, Tamika Catchings, man. I mean, she was, I remember, like, I do not watch WNBA. I just want to put that out there. I'm sure you guys can kind of tell by my first couple sentences here about Tamika Catchings. However, when I would listen about the NBA, which was brief, but I would every now and then kind of, seeing, what's going on over there. One of the names that always stuck out with me, there was one Lisa Leslie, who I know is like a, crazy star. She's, pretty sure she's a Hall of Famer already. I'd be super surprised if she wasn't. There was also Diana Taurasi. Those were 2. But then another one, Tamika Catchings. And I know that there are a lot that are better than Tamika Catchings. Like, there's a lot of legendary WNBA players that I did not name there. But Tamika Catchings was just one of those that I always listened to. And, I mean, she had a heck of a career, was a third overall pick in that 2001 draft, a legendary 2001 draft for the WNBA, I should say as well, who had, let me just go to it real quick, who had people like Lauren Jackson, who was, I should say, one of the only international player in the WNBA to win an MVP. Won 4 of those, I would say. I'm pretty sure she won 4. You also have Ruth Riley Hunter in that draft, 5th overall. I like that. Okay. Wasn't there someone else in here that was... there was someone else. I was sure of it, but I guess I cannot remember who it was. But you had an incredible draft there, and Tamika Catchings was one of the best players on that draft. Played 15 years in the NBA, had the highest win shares in that draft as well, and just had an incredible career. And she absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, the basketball Naismith Hall of Fame. Next, we have Rudy Tom Janovich, who had both a great career, but also, as a player, but as a coach, was absolutely incredible. I mean, joined the Houston Rockets as an assistant coach for 8 years? 9 years. And then became the head coach. Had a decent first season because he was kind of added in midway of the season. Went 16-14 in his 30 games, but then went 55-27 the year after. And then after that, he went back-to-back championships. Of course, had Hakeem the Dream. You got, what was it? Who else was on that team? I want to say Otis Thorpe. I'm not big on those old teams, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. Yep, Otis Thorpe. You had, Sam Cassell. You had Kenny Smith. Come on. You had Clyde Drexler. You had some great players, but Rudy Tom Janovich certainly helped this team make it big in those 2 seasons and win back-to-back championships. I mean, he had a heck of a career, man. 943 games coached, 527 wins, 416 losses for a very solid win percentage of 559. Very solid career, and also a very solid playoff record too. 51-39 for a 567 win percentage. Just consistently very good. And then he became the Lakers coach for 1 year, and then after that he retired. Was inducted as a coach, not a player, but still as a player averaged 17 points a game, 8 rebounds in the 80s and 70s, and was just a very solid player. So definitely deserved as well for Rudy Tom Janovich. Now we're going to go to some of those college coaches, which I just want to make sure you guys know I'm not very big on college, but I'm going to get into it anyways. So first we do have Bauman, who was a FIBA executive, helped grow the game internationally in so many different ways. He served as a Secretary General of FIBA, the basketball's world governing body, and then from 2003 until he suffered, of course, that tragic heart attack at the Youth Olympics in Buenos Aires in 2018. He had his, I believe it was his kids, kind of being there as his representatives, and I mean, he did a lot for the game internationally, and that's a big part of it. I mean, it's a big reason why the NBA has so many international players in the league right now. Bauman had a big part in that. And, of course, he began in Europe playing the game he loved, and he shared that love of the sport with the entire world. So you got to give it to Patrick Bauman. The love of the game was obviously there, and that's why he deserves to be in the Naismith Hall of Fame. Next, we have Kim Mulkey, who has had a ridiculous career at Baylor, 3 national championships, a combined 21 Big 12 regular season and tournament titles. She also achieved 600 career wins faster. What's going on here? Oh boy. I just took that away. Kim Mulkey. Oh boy. So she also reached the 600 wins quicker than anybody? Is that what I was about to say? Yeah, career wins faster than any other Division I men's or women's coach. And the pinnacle of individual basketball honors, of course, named to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame class. Now, I mean, to make it to 600 career wins faster than any other Division I men's or women's coach, that's ridiculous honor, aside from all of her crazy accomplishments of titles and regular season titles. I mean, just it all gets put together into her being one of the best coaches in college basketball, and I'm pretty sure anybody would say the same. So Kim Mulkey in the Hall of Fame as well. We also have a Division II coach in Barbara Stevens. Gotta give it to Barbara Stevens to stick in Division II and become one of only 6 coaches to have amassed at least 1,000 career victories. A ridiculous group that includes Pat Summitt, Tara Van Der Veer, Gino Auriemma, Sylvia Hatchell in the 1,000 win club. I mean, just ridiculous. And look at this record. In 43 years that she was coaching, she had 1,058 wins and 291 losses. That's success if I've ever seen it. And I mean, to just continuously be in Division II and, not kind of like seek to kind of go any higher, like that just shows someone who is happy with what they're doing and just does it at a high level. So Barbara Stevens, I mean, you also look at what she did in the 2014 when her 28th Bentley team capped off a perfect season, 35-0, with a come-from-behind 73-65 win over West Texas A&M for the program's first ever NCAA Division II National Championship. Ridiculous honor. I mean, incredible career for Barbara Stevens, and certainly deserves to be in the Naismith Hall of Fame. And lastly, we got, Eddie Sutton, a man who had 806 wins and 3 Final Four appearances. Eddie Sutton now entering the Hall of Fame, much deserved. Ranks 9th all-time with those 806 career victories. He is an 8-time Conference Coach of the Year and a 2-time recipient of the Associated Press National Coach of the Year Award, both in 78 and 86. And now he is part of both the College Basketball Hall of Fame and the Naismith Hall of Fame. Certainly deserved, and coached 37 seasons of Division I coaching, won 17 conference regular season and tournament championships, and just absolutely incredible. Led Oklahoma State to a combined 26 NCAA tournament appearances in those 37 seasons. That's not easy to do. And Oklahoma State, yes, it's a big school, but it's not one that is like guaranteed to always make it to the tournament like those big programs like Kentucky, Duke. What's another one that I'm not thinking of? Again, I'm terrible with college basketball, but regardless, those are the two that popped. Kansas, I guess, would be another one, but still, for Sutton to be able to do that over his years of coaching obviously shows that this man knew what he was doing and did it at a high level for so many years. 37 seasons to be exact. So absolutely deserves to be in that 2020 Hall of Fame class. Like I said, legendary Hall of Fame class at that. So hats off to everyone that was inducted. Oh, and how great was it, before I sign off here for this segment, how beautiful was it for Michael Jordan to be the one to present Kobe Bryant at the Hall of Fame, and then for his daughter Vanessa to wear his jacket and be on that stage with all those great, just legends. It was a very beautiful moment, one I'll always remember. And that's going to wrap it up for the segment. So make sure you guys stick around, because when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the NBA play-in tournament, making my predictions, which teams are going to end up in what seeds. Let's talk about that right after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. If you missed the last segment, we talked about the legendary 2020 Hall of Fame class. Guys like Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, among other legends of the game that have all contributed in major ways. I talked about all of them in the last segment. If you guys want to check that out, please go ahead and do so. But now we're going to be talking about the play-in tournament. I might even give a couple predictions if I am feeling it, because yes, I know I said that in the beginning, but now I'm looking at the standings like, man, this thing can change in so many different ways, and there are some games that I'm going to be talking about in the next segment that have a lot to do with that. So first, let's talk about this play-in. Like, do you guys even like this new format of only the top 6 seeds being guaranteed, and after that, the 7 through 10 have to go into this tournament to decide who's going to be the 7th and 8th seed? And the way that for me, I kind of like it because I like the fact that it makes teams have to, push. Normally a team like the Bulls, who were 11th or 10th, I think they were 11th or 12th for a while, and they normally would not have had a chance to make that push for the 8th seed. But instead, now all they had to do was make a push for the 10th seed. And that made them trade for a Nikola Vucevic. Made things interesting, of course, and didn't work out. They still got eliminated from the playoffs and didn't do what they had to do down the stretch. But now we know in the Eastern Conference, you got Boston Celtics, Charlotte Hornets, Washington Wizards, and the Indiana Pacers all locked into that play-in tournament. Now, we still don't know who's going to be seated there, but I loved the competition part of it, the fact that all these teams were trying extremely hard to try to get in. And even now, teams like the LA Lakers are doing their hardest to try to not be in it to get one of those, guaranteed spots. They're literally tied with the Portland Trailblazers, have the same record, but they're going to need a little bit of help from Portland. They got to lose a game because Portland has a tiebreaker over the Lakers. So, for me, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed just the atmosphere of it, just that little bit that it added towards the end. Because normally around this time, either we already know who's going to be in the playoffs, or there's like 1 or 2 games that need to decide who's going to be the 8th seed or maybe even the 7th seed. But this year, it changed a lot of things. Now it's like who's going to jostle for that 8th or 9th spot, so that because the difference between 8 and 9 is huge, which is what we're seeing right now with the Memphis Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors. If Golden State right now is 9th, which I absolutely hate because we want Lakers versus Golden State Warriors. We want that. That's facts. If you don't want that, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. Just straight up, because that would be incredible. LeBron James versus Steph Curry. And let me tell you, one game, Steph Curry can absolutely go off and end the Lakers' chance for a back-to-back titles in the play-in tournament. It can absolutely happen. But if the Memphis Grizzlies go up against the Lakers, it's game over. I give the Memphis Grizzlies absolutely no chance. But again, we're getting too far ahead of ourselves. I'm just trying to feel out this play-in tournament and talk about it a little bit, because this is new. This is brand new, and it might be a thing that stays around for a while. Because something that I heard recently in one of those nationally televised games, where would these stats go? Where would these play-in stats go? Is it going to be postseason stats? Is it going to be regular season stats? In the end, it's going to be neither. It's going to have its own separate stats of a play-in. First ever play-in stats, which Reggie Miller made a pretty decent comment saying that might mean that they're going to keep this thing for the foreseeable future, at least maybe going into next season, which I'm hoping they do, because it will make everything that much more enticing. It makes those final playoff spots that much more enticing. It's not just, who's going to be 7th and 8th to lose to 1 and 2. I mean, especially this year, you got some big teams in that 7th and 8th spot, or at least 7th and 9th right now in the Western Conference, and the Lakers and the Warriors, would you honestly be surprised if either one of those teams upset the Utah Jazz or the Phoenix Suns? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers do it. I would be a bit surprised if the Warriors were to do it, but it just adds that little bit extra of that extra storyline, which is all you want, which is all the NBA wants. It adds intrigue. So now let's talk about what is going to be happening in this tournament. So at first, I thought what would have been the smarter way to do it would be 7 goes against 10, 8 goes against 9. And then whoever wins those 2 games goes up against each other for the 7th seed and 8th seed. But the way they're doing it is 7 and 8 go up against each other to decide the 7th seed. And then 8 goes down to 9, goes up against whoever won between 9 and 10 to decide the 8th seed. I mean, I guess either way is fine, but for me, I would have preferred that 7 gets the luxury. For being 7th, you get the luxury of taking on 10. Because obviously 10 is going to be much, much worse, which it is in this situation. I mean, you got the Spurs holding, obviously they've already clinched it, but they were just barely holding on at 33 and 38, which by the way is the same record as 8, 9, and 10 in the Eastern Conference. So, I mean, we already know that the Eastern Conference is so weak compared to the West, but still, you got the Spurs there at 33 and 38. You got Golden State Warriors at 38 and 33, same as Memphis, and then you got the Lakers at 41 and 30. So right now, you looking at that and you're thinking, okay, so the Lakers have to take on either the Warriors or the Grizzlies. And they could easily lose that game against the Warriors because, of course, they got Steph Curry. And they don't have anybody that can guard Steph Curry. And I know they don't have Klay Thompson. That's obvious. But still, I look at that and I'm like, it's a definite possibility that the Lakers could lose that. I don't expect them to lose to either the Spurs or the Grizzlies, whichever one were to make it out of that 9-10 spot. But still, it just, there's a little bit more risk for the 7th seed. And I know that, again, adds the storyline. It adds the intrigue. It adds the suspense. But I just, it's a little bit of, a little part of me just doesn't like it because I feel like it creates a little bit of an unfair advantage. Or not an unfair disadvantage for the 7th seed of each conference. They should be taking on the weaker team. I know for them, or for the 7th, technically, the 7th and 8th seed are pretty much the same seed. You can look at it that way, because now they're just taking on each other to see who goes on for the 7th seed. But the Lakers right now have a 3-game gap between them and the Memphis Grizzlies for the 7th and 8th, for the 7th and 8th spot. So the Lakers have, played their way into that 7th seed. But that doesn't mean anything because all that puts them in is still the play-in tournament to leave them into one game to still try to hold on to that 7th seed that they have fought hard to keep. And that's where I'm a little bit against it, just the format of it, not the play-in tournament itself. Just the way that they're going about it. That 7 and 8 go up against each other, 9 and 10 go up against each other. I understand 9 and 10 need to win 2 games to guarantee themselves a playoff spot. So I get it. 9 and 10 are at a disadvantage and need to win 2. They're literally both games to make it into the playoffs. Understood. But still, the 7th seed doesn't get any sort of advantage over the 8th seed here at all. They're a better team, sure. I mean, in the East, yeah, even there, the Celtics, it's literally the same thing. They have a 3-game gap over the Charlotte Hornets. But Boston Celtics have not been playing well. Charlotte can win that game. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And then you put the Boston Celtics against either Washington or Indiana, which, in my opinion, I'm putting my money on Washington and Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, who can absolutely win one game against the Celtics. So a team that has fought its way to a 7th seed, who, again, they've kind of not fought their way, they've kind of slid their way down to a 7th seed, now has to try to beat the Charlotte Hornets and I guess maybe the Washington Wizards to make it into the playoffs. I feel like if you were to put them up against the Indiana Pacers, again, not a easy game that they just can, that for sure they're going to win that game, but still gives them a little bit more of an advantage over what they're getting right now. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is I wanted to see a little bit more of a gap in terms of advantage for the 7th compared to the 8th seed, but there isn't. So that's my gripes with the play-in tournament. Everything other than that, I love everything else. I love the competitiveness of it, what it adds to pretty much the whole season. And so now let's talk about the predictions. What teams are going to end up where, and what teams are going to make it into the 7th and 8th seeds. So let's start off with the Eastern Conference, as that is obviously the weaker conference, not the best competition here. You got the Boston Celtics, who are the 7th seed at 36 and 35. They've obviously been playing horrendous of late, have not had any sort of good basketball. On top of that, they're dealing with injuries. Jaylen Brown out for the year, and they're going to have to go up against either the Charlotte Hornets, Washington Wizards, or Indiana Pacers, because all three of those teams are tied at 33 and 38. So anything can happen there. Literally anything. Indiana can end up the 8th seed and have to take on Boston. It's crazy. It's that tight down the stretch. All three have the same record. So, in my opinion, I think the Washington Wizards are going to end up with that 8th seed. And then they're going to end up going up against the Boston Celtics. Now, once that happens, and of course, hold on, I got to first look at who they play. And they play the Charlotte Hornets. That's so funny. They play the Charlotte Hornets. And who does Indiana play? Indiana plays the Toronto Raptors. So, even Toronto can win that game, but I feel like Washington will win that game against Charlotte. I just do. Of course, it depends if they're fully healthy. I don't even think they have Gordon Hayward back yet. I'm pretty sure they're without Gordon Hayward right now. And yeah, it's gonna be tough for them to come out on top there, because Washington has been playing absolutely incredible in the second half of the season. Russell Westbrook has been on a legendary tear, and I feel like that's going to be a tough game for Charlotte. They don't have the defenders on the perimeter to really stick with either Bradley Beal or Russell Westbrook, and I feel like in the end that's going to cause them problems. And then even when you talk about down low, there is no presence down low for the Charlotte Hornets, which will allow Russell Westbrook to live down there. And that will cause problems as well. So in the end, I think Washington will make it into the 8th seed and take on the Boston Celtics. Now, what will happen there? Honestly, I feel like the Washington Wizards will then take the 7th seed. I really do. I do not like the way Boston is playing right now, even though Kemba has looked a lot better. I'll give it to him there. But I just don't see the Boston Celtics. Like, Jason Tatum needs to go off, which he can in one game. He literally put up 60 against the Spurs recently in a huge comeback, and he can certainly lead them to a win in that play-in tournament to get to the 7th seed, which then your reward will be the Brooklyn Nets. So, it's like, it's a lose-lose there, I guess. So, but in the end, I really do feel like the Washington Wizards will somehow end up with a 7th seed. From a 9th seed to a 7th seed, they're 3 games behind. And again, that's what I'm talking about. Where it's like, how can the Washington Wizards go from 9th, 3 games behind the Boston Celtics, to 7th after winning just 2 games? Winning 2 games. It just doesn't make any sense, and it really bothers me. But again, that's the way they're going to do it this year, and I see it happening. I see the Boston Celtics losing that first game and then going up against, let's see, either Charlotte or Indiana. And of course, it depends on the health of Charlotte, but I actually can see Indiana winning that game. It would suck for Charlotte, who had a very solid start to this season. It obviously fell off a little bit with LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward out with injuries. LaMelo Ball came back recently. Gordon Hayward is still not back, but it will be certainly a sting, no pun intended, for that franchise, as they will be the odd man out in that tournament. So the Charlotte Hornets will not be there. The Indiana Pacers will be moving on, taking on the Boston Celtics for that 8th seed, and to see who will take on the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round of the playoffs. And you look at that, and I like the matchup for Indiana. Like, Indiana's got a lot of great all-around players. Like, you got a very solid front court in Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis, who, in my opinion, can bully. Even though Robert Williams has been low-key very solid this year, a very good up-and-coming player. I just don't think this will be the year that he has that kind of impact for the Boston Celtics. I don't think he's going to be able to stop, especially if he's guarding, even though they might put a guy like, they might put him on a guy like Domantas Sabonis, who prefers to play, more inside compared to a Miles Turner. And then who knows who they put on Miles Turner on the outside. Maybe they like to play small and they'll put Jason Tatum on him. But then Miles Turner can go inside and kind of gobble up those rebounds. So I actually feel it's close. It's close. The thing is, I can't go against the Boston Celtics here. It's just like, it's so close. But I think it's going to be the Boston Celtics who get that 8 seed. Even though I'm like right there. It's like it's by the skin of my teeth where I'm like, because I love the matchup that Indiana has against the Boston Celtics, especially with no Jaylen Brown. That's got to be said. No Jaylen Brown for the Boston Celtics. That is a huge loss. That's their second best player. And honestly, for a lot of this season, he was their best player. More efficient, tougher player. He's obviously not as, versatile on the offensive end, but he still gives it to you every single night, and I really feel like that loss is going to make the Boston Celtics just barely make it into the playoffs. But I do believe they will make it in. So for my predictions, I see the Washington Wizards as the 7th seed and the Boston Celtics making it in as the 8th seed, with Charlotte and Indiana being the odd teams out. And that's the way that Eastern Conference play-in tournament is going to go, in my opinion. Of course, we still need to wait and see how this final game of the season goes for Charlotte, Washington, and Indiana, because we got to see how that jostles in the standings. But I do believe Washington will beat Charlotte, which again I'll get into more detail in my next segment. And yeah, so now let's move on to the Western Conference, where it gets real exciting. So you got the LA Lakers, 41-30. Looking very solid there. They're finally getting healthy. Got LeBron James, Davis, Drummond, Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell. Ridiculous. A crazy amount of talent. One of the best 7 seeds of all time, if we can be honest. And they will have to go up against either the Memphis Grizzlies or the Golden State Warriors. Oddly enough, the Memphis Grizzlies take on the Golden State Warriors for this final game. I don't want to talk much about it. I really don't. But just for these predictions, I will just go off what I'm looking at right here. As if, it's Lakers at 7, Memphis at 8, Golden State 9, and Spurs at 10. Now, like I said, the Lakers are geared up for another championship run. There is no way that LeBron James will allow his Lakers to lose the first game of the play-in tournament. They will not. They're going to win, and obviously on top of that, they're trying to even avoid the play-in tournament, tied with the Portland Trailblazers at 41-30. The Trailblazers have a game against the Denver Nuggets on Sunday, which again I'm going to talk about in the next segment. Don't want to get into much detail here, so it's even possible that the Lakers won't even be in this 7th seed. They could possibly be in the 6th seed. Who do the Lakers take on? They take on the Pelicans. And the Pelicans have been resting Zion, so that looks like an easy win for the Lakers, because they're obviously going to be trying to win that game to give them the best chance of being the 6th seed to take on the Denver Nuggets. Now let's talk about it. Lakers versus the Memphis Grizzlies. No contest. You got the Lakers with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, 2 of the best players in the NBA. Haven't been playing, so I understand a little bit of rust has to be taken off. But, LeBron looked great the other day. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? LeBron looked absolutely incredible for the Lakers. Not a single bit of rust. Not a little bit. Incredible. 36 years old. The guy still looks like he did 5 years ago. Guy's a monster. So they're going to win that game, be the 7th seed if they are in that play-in tournament. And now, Golden State and San Antonio. Now, I love what San Antonio has done. Jacob Poeltl kind of becoming a decent starter for them. Obviously, DeRozan having a very solid season. DeJounte Murray coming into his own, looking very nice. You got guys like Lonnie Walker. What's this other kid's name? There was one other player on their team that I was very impressed with. Let me see. Devin Vassell, very good three-point shooter. Gorgie Dang gives them some good depth on the center position. Keldon Johnson, that's the one. I really am impressed with Keldon Johnson, the way he looks. He also got Derek White. Is he injured, though? I think he's injured, if I'm not mistaken. Doesn't expect Derek White back this season. He's not even there. So that is a big loss for them. He's one of their best players. But then you also got Rudy Gay. You got some veteran presences on this team. So I do feel like the San Antonio Spurs are not they're the odd man out. They're not going to win, especially, they do have looked bad over the last 10 games. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games. So certainly do not look good right now. However, you look at the Golden State Warriors. They're going to win this game. It's not even a question. Steph Curry, same way as LeBron James would not allow this Lakers team to lose in the tournament, Steph Curry's not going to let that happen. Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, Kelly Oubre, they're not going to let it happen. They're going to win this game. So now it's all left with Memphis and the Golden State Warriors. And in my opinion, which I'm sure plenty of other people are going to have this same opinion, Golden State's going to win that game. Now, it's going to be close because Golden State are without James Winston. Oh, no. What? James Wiseman. Jameis Winston? Why am I thinking Jameis what? Okay, sorry, people. But yeah, James Wiseman, they're without James Wiseman, who in my opinion still wouldn't have made as big of an impact against a guy like Jonas Valanciunas, who has been killing it this season. And I feel like that's the only way Memphis can really win this game. If Jonas Valanciunas absolutely tears it up. Do they even have Jaren Jackson back? Did he even play this season? I don't even think he played this year. Let me look at that real quick. Let me see. Jaren, where's he at? Jaren Jackson Jr. It says he's ready to go Sunday. Oh, he has been playing a little bit here and there. Looking pretty decent. Yeah, so he has been playing. Was that his first game of the season? No, he's been playing a little bit. I just haven't been paying attention to any of the Memphis Grizzlies games because I could care less. But yeah, he came back. What was it? April 22nd. So he's been playing for almost a month now. So he's got a little bit of his legs under him, but he's still only playing 23 minutes a game, 14 points, 5 rebounds. So it's obviously not the Jaren Jackson Jr. that we have seen in the past 2 seasons, but still, Memphis is on a 5-game win streak, 7-3 in their last 10 games, looking pretty solid. Grayson Allen's kind of come into his own this year, formed a little bit of a role for himself. DeAnthony Melton is an excellent player off the bench for them. Of course, Ja Morant is their superstar, or I should say just a star. He hasn't really taken that leap yet. Kyle Anderson, very solid forward for them. Brandon Clark, live wire, very good spark plug off the bench. Justice Winslow gives them that defensive wing that can, you can kind of put on whoever you really want. He can guard 1 through 5, in my opinion. He's very solid. Dylan Brooks, can't stand Dylan Brooks as a player. Super inefficient, but he does average 17 points a game in 30 minutes. But look at that, 2 assists, just under 3 rebounds. I mean, he does kind of nothing else. But again, Dylan Brooks is one of those scoring threats on this team. And then who else you got? That's about it. Oh, of course, Jonas Valanciunas, who I've already talked about, is having an incredible year. 17 points a game, 12.5 rebounds. And I'm pretty sure he's averaging how many blocks a game? Where's it at? Oh, okay, no, it's under a block a game. So not much in rim protection, but certainly in rebounding and interior finishing, he gives a lot there. And that's one of the weaknesses for the Golden State Warriors this year. I don't even think a Draymond Green can really do much against a Jonas Valanciunas. I mean, the height difference is ridiculous. Even though Draymond Green certainly has the strength to hold off a Jonas Valanciunas, I do not think that he has the size. It's not really going to work out there. So that is the one chance Memphis has to really move on in this tournament. But they got Steph Curry. They got Steph freaking Curry. And they're going to win that game. In the end, they're going to win that game. But also, they might not even have to, because there is a big game this Sunday that could decide whether they even have to play that game, and we can get one of the best games ever with the play-in tournament, with the 7th and 8th seed in the Western Conference getting the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Golden State Warriors, only if the Golden State Warriors can beat the Memphis Grizzlies on Sunday. We're going to be talking about that next on the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. If you missed the last segment, we talked about the NBA play-in tournament. I gave my thoughts on the tournament itself, whether I believe it's going to be coming back past this season, and I also gave my predictions on who I believe is going to be making it past the tournament and into the playoffs. So now we're going to be talking about the biggest games of the final day of the season. We have all 32 teams facing off, 16 games, and there are some big ones here. A lot of implications on seeding, and we're going to be getting into every single one of those now in this segment. First, I want to talk about those early games. We got Indiana Pacers versus the Toronto Raptors. There is some talk there. There is something going on there because Indiana Pacers are now tied with the Washington Wizards and the Charlotte Hornets for that 8th seed. And if the Indiana Pacers win and Charlotte, well, actually, right now, the best they can get is the 9th seed because Charlotte and the Washington Wizards play as well at 1 o'clock. So I guess there really isn't much further Indiana to play with there because, I guess going for that 9th seed, but what does that really do for you? Because there's no difference between 9 and 10 in the play-in tournament. You still got to win 2 games to get into the playoffs. So in the end, that Indiana Pacers game won't really do much there. Boston Celtics versus the New York Knicks. That's a big one because for Boston, it doesn't really matter. They're locked into that 7th seed. However, for the Knicks, now that the Heat, who didn't have Jimmy Butler tonight, or Bam, or Tyler Hero, yes, they had Bam and Tyler, but they didn't play at all. They sucked. It was terrible. I'm pissed. And now the Knicks, all they got to do is win, and they lock up, I believe, the 4th seed because they have the tiebreaker over the Atlanta Hawks, but they don't have the tiebreaker over the Heat. So they need to win that game to lock up that 4th seed. If they don't, anything can happen. They can even fall all the way down to 6 and take on the Milwaukee Bucks, which I'm sure nobody wants to do because that is the same side of the bracket as the Brooklyn Nets. And that means a very, 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 very tough path all the way to the NBA Finals because that means you're taking on, if you're the 6th seed, you're likely obviously you're going to take on it's either the Bucks or the Nets because still the Bucks could technically still make it to the 2nd seed, but it's going to be the Bucks or the Nets, and then in the second round you're taking on the Bucks or the Nets. So either way you're taking on both of those teams, and then in the conference finals, if you make it that far, you'd have to take on the Philadelphia 76ers or let's say whoever, if another team upsets them, and that would be incredible. But yeah, you'd have to have a very, very tough path. The 4-5 path is much easier because you could avoid one of those 2-3 seeds, let them go at it and eliminate one of them, and you got to deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. But for me as a Heat fan, for any team, much easier path than to have to go through all three of the toughest teams in the Eastern Conference. So definitely a lot on the line for the New York Knicks in this game. It's in Madison Square Garden. They're going to be looking to get this W, and I'm pretty sure they can get it. Though the Celtics looked good in their last game. They beat them, even though it was the Minnesota Timberwolves. They beat them 124-108. Though the Celtics just have not looked good of late. Only 4-6 in their last 10 games. Lost Jaylen Brown recently for the season, so that certainly is a gut punch for them. And they're going to be relying heavily on Jason Tatum, and even Kemba Walker was out, and he's out both games. Oh my God. Kemba Walker's not even playing on Sunday. That hurts. That really, really hurts. So they're going to be without two of their best three scoring options. They do still have their best scoring option in Jason Tatum, but he's going to have to carry a massive load to be able to beat this team. They're going to be leaning heavily on Marcus Smart. Tristan Thompson's going to have to give him good minutes. Evan Fournier is going to have to play out of his mind, as he has, since that very poor start to his Boston Celtics career. And they could win the game, but I'm leaning towards the Knicks heavily because the Knicks have been playing great. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games, won 2 in a row. They just finished beating the Charlotte Hornets in overtime. They've beaten the Hawks, the Raptors, the Bulls. What else? I think I went too far back. But in their last 4 games, they've beaten the Clippers, the Spurs. They lost to the Lakers by 2. They did lose to the Nuggets and the Suns, but yeah, man. I mean, they've been dominating this season. Their defense is incredible. They got a star now in Julius Randle. They got an up-and-coming young player in R.J. Barrett playing very well this season. Nerlens Noel has taken that Mitchell Robinson role in stride. Obviously, he's no Mitchell Robinson, but he's still a very solid defensive center and can provide that down low. But it's going to be very hard for Boston to go into Madison Square Garden and win this game, even though it is possible. I don't see it happening. I see the Knicks winning that game and locking up, I'm pretty sure, would be the 4th seed now. Yep, it would be the 4th seed if they win it. So now we keep on going, and we got the Hornets versus the Wizards. And that is a big game because the Hornets and the Wizards are tied for the same record. Hornets have the tiebreaker, so they're in the 8th seed. The Washington Wizards are in the 9th seed. Washington have been playing extremely well. Since, I want to say, pretty much the whole second half of the season, they've really turned it around and have gotten into this play-in tournament. I was talking about them like a little bit about, them possibly making it into the tournament, but I didn't actually think they were going to have that big of a, of a hot streak in the second half of the season to actually make it there. But they made it all the way there and even made it into the 9th seed. So can they beat the Charlotte Hornets? 100%. Absolutely. Charlotte Hornets have not been playing well. They've lost 4 in a row, 3-7 in their last 10 games. They're dealing with injuries. Guys like, let me see. Let me go to that game and see what their injury report is looking like. They got Gordon Hayward still out. Doesn't look like he's going to be coming back for the play-in. Yeah, it says he's likely out for the play-in, so they're not going to have him either. That's going to be a big miss. While the Washington Wizards, Bradley Beal's a game-time decision. Russell Westbrook's playing. I'm pretty sure it says Bradley Beal could return on Sunday, which would be a huge get because that's big for them, man. That gives them 2 games that they can they can possibly win to get into the tournament. It's no longer they need to win 2 games if they're the 9th seed. So this is a big game for both of these teams. It's a home game for the Wizards, so it gives them an even bigger advantage, and I certainly see the Wizards coming away with a victory here. I would be extremely surprised if the Hornets win this game. Obviously they lean heavily on Lonzo Ball, not LaMelo Ball, I get them confused sometimes, and Miles Bridges has had a very solid season. Terry Rozier's been very, very good. PJ Washington's been solid. Even Devontae Graham's been giving them a lot, but their best two players were Gordon Hayward and LaMelo Ball. Terry Rozier has been right there as that other really good player. He's been right there with the two of them, but LaMelo Ball has been solid. I mean, let me see his last couple games, see if he's been tearing it up. Yeah, he hasn't had that same magic, at least especially over the last two games, even though he did have an 18-point, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steal game against the Clippers. He had an 8-point, 3 rebound, 4 assist game against the New York Knicks in his last game out. It's he just obviously it's going to be difficult with that injury. He also couldn't play the second half of the game against the Knicks, so obviously that kind of hurts his stats a little bit there. But I just don't see the Charlotte Hornets, even if LaMelo Ball's playing great. They need big games from Rozier, Graham, Bridges. Everyone needs to contribute here. And the main thing is that they don't have much down low. The Wizards don't either, but the Wizards have a guy in Russell Westbrook who lives inside the paint, is an absolute monster. I mean, he's got a 29.5 PER this season, averaging 22 points a game, almost 12 assists, and almost 12 rebounds. Absolutely incredible. On decent average. I mean, 44% from the field. I mean, that's not great, but, that's I don't want to say average, but that's slightly below average. But, I mean, compared to what he's done in previous seasons, that's not terrible. He's got a high usage rate, so, he has the ball in his hands a lot of the time. He's got 37 triple-doubles this season. Became the all-time leader in triple-doubles in the history of basketball. So he's got something to prove that he can, obviously, he's one of the greatest point guards ever, but, he's got to prove that he can win it when it matters. And I think Russell Westbrook's going to show up in a big way. He's going to have his star, in Bradley Beal there next to him. Rui Hachimura has been very solid this season as well. He's going to be playing there. And I really do feel that the Washington Wizards are going to play themselves into that 8th seed and go up against Celtics in the play-in tournament. Like I said in the last segment, I feel like the Washington Wizards will end up with that 7th seed with the way the Celtics are playing, and especially now that Kemba Walker is out. Not that he gave you anything defensively, but he at least gave you a bit offensively that you can then keep up with the Washington Wizards, who have been a very good offensive team this season, averaging 116 points a game. It's just their defense. Their defense is atrocious, and they're going to need a little bit of that. But really against the Charlotte Hornets, who have not been a good offensive team this season, it won't be an issue. So I really do feel that the Wizards are going to win this game and move on into the 8th seed. What else do we have here? Phoenix Suns versus the Spurs. Does that do anything here? Phoenix Suns, yeah, I mean, technically, I don't know if the Phoenix Suns have the tiebreaker over the Jazz, do they? Let me see. Have they beaten the Jazz? They beat the Jazz there, so that's 1 win. Got another win, so it's looking like they might have the tiebreaker over the Jazz. Wow. Wow, yeah, 3 wins. So they have the tiebreaker over the Jazz. So they have a lot to go into there as well. Spurs, they don't. They're locked into that 10th seed, but the Suns have a lot to play for there. Get the 1st seed and the number 1 overall seed in the entire playoffs, which would be huge for them. That would be an incredible story. Monty Williams, in my opinion, would have himself locked into that Coach of the Year award. I know some people are talking Tom Thibodeau, which, I understand the Knicks with Julius Randle kind of, becoming an incredible player this year. We're going to win Most Improved. You got R.J. Barrett doing great things. Tom Thibodeau's done a great job there, but I just think Monty Williams, even with the 2nd seed, the guy, they've separated themselves in that upper echelon of the NBA. They have the 2nd best record in the NBA this season, fighting in that Western Conference. That is not easy to do. To win 50 games in a 72-game season, that is not an easy thing to do, and they can easily win a 51st game, but they need the Utah Jazz to lose? The Utah Jazz actually, do they have 2 games left? Oh, yeah, because they play did they play today? Let me see. No, they beat the Thunder yesterday. So, yeah, they only have 1 game left against the Kings. I don't know why I'm so confused here. Because they're 51-21. Yeah. So, yeah, they need the Utah Jazz to lose, and they need to win. So, obviously, they need to have, they need to be playing well in this game and win, which I do expect them to do that because I'm sure they're going to be eyeing that number 1 seed. So, there's going to be all hands on deck for the Phoenix Suns. So, expect a win there for the Suns. You got the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Golden State Warriors. That is another big game between the 8th and 9th seeds in their respective conference. Sets up a huge storyline. Which team is going to play themselves into the 8th seed to play the Lakers? Man, we're all hoping that the Golden State Warriors, both teams are playing exactly the same over the last 10 games. 7-3, both on a 5-game win streak, playing very well. They even have the same goal, the differential, the net differential. Well, Memphis is at plus 1.2. Golden State Warriors are at plus 0.9. Playing a little bit worse defensively, a little bit better offensively than the Memphis Grizzlies. But they got a weapon there that the Memphis Grizzlies absolutely do not, and that's Steph Curry. But at the same time, Memphis Grizzlies have that size down low. Jaren Jackson Jr.'s back. They got Jonas Valanciunas, who's having an incredible season. And it's going to be a tight game, but I do expect the Golden State Warriors to win this game. More like I'm putting that out into the universe, because who does not want to see the Lakers versus the Golden State Warriors in the first game of that play-in tournament to see who makes the 7th seed? I sure do, and it would be really crazy to see the Lakers as an 8th seed. LeBron, AD, Drummond, Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroeder. That would be, I already said about the 7th seed, best 7th seed of all time, but obviously that means the best 8th seed of all time. I mean, that would be incredible to see that. But yeah, there's a lot on the line there in that game between Memphis and Golden State. Those teams, that's going to be one I'm probably going to want to watch, as it has a lot of seeding implications in that game. Philadelphia versus Orlando, nothing much going there. You got Philadelphia's already locked up that number 1 seed, so they are pretty much going to sit all their starters, probably going to just, coast with just their role players and coast into the playoffs. Brooklyn Nets versus the Cavaliers. There is still a little bit to be playing for there. Brooklyn Nets still fighting for that number 2 seed. I'm sure they want that to not have to go up against either a Miami Heat or a Knicks or a Hawks. So, but I mean, regardless, I'm sure they're not afraid of any team. They're eyeing the championship, so any team that they want to face, they're going to face them. But they need to win this game in order to guarantee themselves a spot in the number 2 seed. Because right now, the Milwaukee Bucks are only 1 game behind them. So if a win for the Bucks and a loss for the Nets makes the Bucks the 2 seed and the Nets the 3 seed. So Nets need to win that game. It is a decent one against the Cavs. However, if we do remember, earlier this season, when the Brooklyn Nets had their big 3, the Cavs beat them twice in a row. I'm sure the Nets are going to be thinking about that, want that revenge before the end of the season. So next we have the Atlanta Hawks versus the Rockets. Another game that has some playoff seeding implications there. The Atlanta Hawks in a fight with the Heat and the New York Knicks for the 4, 5, and 6 seeds. Right now they're 5th. The Knicks do have that tiebreaker over them. The Heat now with 32 losses need a lot of help from the Atlanta Hawks and the Knicks. They need both those teams to lose for them to have a chance at the 4 seed or even the 5th seed. One of those teams need to lose because they don't have the tiebreaker over the Hawks, but they do have the tiebreaker over the Knicks. So they do need the Knicks to lose in order to get a chance to get into that 5th seed. But the Atlanta Hawks have been playing so well under Nate McMillan. They've been playing like one of the best teams in basketball over the last couple weeks. And I feel like they're going to come into this game with especially against the Houston Rockets, who have the worst record in the NBA, I want to say by far. Yeah, by far. They're 17-54. Detroit Pistons right behind them are 20-51. So, I expect the Hawks to win that game, especially with a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic playing out of his mind of late. I mean, the guy is just playing absolutely ridiculous. Shows why the Bucks wanted him I mean, man, if the Bucks would have gotten him and Drew Holiday, that would have been scary. Him instead of Dante DiVincenzo, my God. Like, I just saw Dante DiVincenzo in this game tonight against the Heat. He did not look that good. Like, doesn't hit a lot of threes. He's a little hesitant on offense. Gives you a little bit defensively, but Bogdanovich is a monster on the offensive end. He's showing that he can literally run a team. Another ball handler that can, play make, score off the dribble, and spot up, which would be perfect for a guy like Giannis. Just thinking about that just makes me shiver because that would have been crazy. But luckily it didn't happen, and now he's with the Atlanta Hawks, playing very well, and they have a chance to lock up the 4th seed if they win and the New York Knicks lose. But they need to take care of business first and stay in that 5th seed at least. So I do see them playing extremely hard in that game and locking up that 5th seed. So next, we have the Denver Nuggets versus the Portland Trailblazers, another game that has a lot of seeding implications. Denver Nuggets trying to lock up that 3rd seed. They need to get that win. They have the tiebreaker over the LA Clippers. Both teams have the same record. And also for the Portland Trailblazers, they have the same record as the LA Lakers. They need to win that game. So this is going to be a game both teams are really going to want to win. It's going to be a very exciting game to watch. And if the Portland Trailblazers lose, that gives the Lakers a prime time chance of making it out of the play-in tournament and grabbing that 6th seed, which would also mean that the Denver Nuggets would keep that 3rd seed, and you'd see Denver versus the Lakers in the first round. But how nice would it be if the Clippers, how would it happen? If the Clippers somehow go into the 3rd seed, and so do the Lakers, and then you get an LA versus LA first round matchup. That would be exciting to watch. So honestly, either way works for me, but I want to see Golden State versus the Lakers in the play-in tournament. I'm sorry, I just do. I want to see Steph Curry light up the Lakers and drop them down to an 8th seed. I would love to see that, but regardless, it's going to be a very, very big game between Denver and Portland. Both teams, needing a win to hold on to their seeding, and so that's going to be very tight. Next, we have the Lakers versus the Pelicans. Again, like I've been saying, Lakers need to get the win here if they want any chance of getting out of the play-in tournament. So they're going to be trying their hardest. While I've also seen the Pelicans not really putting in their top players. In the last game they played against the Golden State Warriors, they rested Zion. Well, he had an injury, but there was no Zion, no Steven Adams, even though I'm pretty sure Adams has he been out for a while? He's only been playing. What's going on with him? 8 minutes played, 1 minute, 2 minutes? I guess he's been injured. Oh, no, that's not him. What? Why did it click? I'm clicking Steven Adams. Yeah, he's injured with a toe injury, and he's out for the finale. So he's not going to be playing that game. Is Zion Williamson playing? Yep, his sophomore season's over. He's not going to be playing. Brandon Ingram, also done for the year. Yeah, they're not going to be playing any of these guys. Yeah, out Sunday. All these top players for the Pelicans are out, which gives the Lakers a primetime chance of winning this game, which they likely will. And, it'll be all left to the Portland Trailblazers. And also, great thing is both those games are at the same time, so we're going to find out who's the 6th seed, who's the 7th seed at pretty much the same time. You also got the Bucks versus the Bulls. Obviously, Bulls eliminated, but the Bucks still have a chance at that number 2 seed, so they will be playing very hard to try to get there. Let's see, the Clippers, Thunder. Clippers going to be trying to get that 3rd seed, so they're going to be trying to win that game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, no doubt. You got, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard really wanting to right their wrongs and get over those demons after what happened last year against the Denver Nuggets in the semifinal of the playoffs, losing in 7 games after being up 3-1 in the series. So it's going to be a big game for them and a big postseason for them as well. Utah Jazz versus the Sacramento Kings. Yeah, Utah Jazz want to lock up that number 1 seed. They're going to be playing the Sacramento Kings, who have not been good over the last couple games. What are they doing? 6-4 in the last 10 games, but they have lost 2 in a row. One to Memphis, really close game, 107-106. Both games to Memphis. So, it's not the best way to end the season for them, but still, the Jazz are going to be looking to win this game to lock up that number 1 seed, so expect a win there for them. And then you got the Dallas Mavericks, who are taking on the Timberwolves. For them, I guess it doesn't. I guess it does, because if the Portland Trailblazers, I'm not sure if the Dallas Mavericks have the tiebreaker over them. I guess I can find out right now for y'all. Let's see. Mavericks, where you got the Mavericks? So they won one, lost one. Where's that other game? And then they won one. Do they have a fourth game against them? Do they have? They do not. So the Portland Trailblazers do have the tiebreaker over the Dallas Mavericks. So if Portland wins and Dallas loses, Portland can move all the way up to 5th. So, which honestly, I don't know if they want to. I mean, I guess it all depends if Denver is the 3rd or the 4th seed, because I'm sure they would prefer to take on Denver over the LA Clippers, because I feel like the Clippers match up much better against Portland than Denver does. And yeah, it'll be very, very interesting to see how all these games play out, man. And then of course, my Miami Heat take on the Detroit Pistons at 8 o'clock. It kind of looks like they're locked into that 6th seed. They need a lot of help from the Knicks and the Hawks. They need at least one of those teams to lose. Most likely, actually, it would have to be the Knicks to lose, because there's no chance for them to get the 4th seed now. They had to win their last 2 games, but they lost to the Bucks today with no Jimmy Butler. And if the Knicks lose and the Heat win, they still got a chance at that 5th seed, which would be much more preferred, so that they can avoid that Brooklyn Nets and Bucks bracket, and they can take on the 76ers in that second round. They just punched them in the mouth a couple days ago, and they look primed to do another historic run in the postseason. I would love to see the Miami Heat really make some noise and upset some people here, but it's just a lot of inconsistencies this season. I do expect Miami to win, but like I said, they need help from those other teams to move anywhere past 6. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. A lot of interesting games in this last Sunday of the regular season. This is what you hope for, man. A lot of teams vying for seeding. The last game of the season means a lot to a lot of different teams. So make sure you guys keep an eye on all of those. But that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around, because when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the top 10 teams heading into the NBA playoffs. Right after this.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. If you missed the last segment, we talked about the biggest games of this final Sunday of the regular season. A lot of seeding implications going on in pretty much every single game. So if you guys want to hear about all that, all the scenarios, please go and check that out. But now we're going to be talking about the top 10 teams heading into the playoffs. So we're going to be talking about the teams that have been playing the best in this month of May. You know, which teams have taken advantage of their chances and have pretty much solidified their seeds, or which ones have kind of faltered a bit towards the end and haven't really done it. You're going to see a couple question marks in this power, because it's not a power rankings of which teams are the best in the league. This is just my opinion on which teams are looking the best heading into the playoffs. At number 10, I have a tie between the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks. Now, both these teams are fighting for a 5th seed. 5th, 4th seed. Obviously, right now, the Heat can no longer get the 4th seed, but actually, I'm not 100% sure on tiebreakers and all that. There's a lot of things that go into it, but I'm pretty sure the Heat are right now eliminated from the 4th seed after losing to Milwaukee. The Knicks still have a chance at that 4th seed, because they have just continued to play extremely good basketball. You know, they're in pretty much every single game. They rarely get blown out. They just beat the Hornets in overtime. They beat the Spurs by 4. They lost to the Lakers by 2. They beat the Clippers. They did lose 2 games in a row to the Nuggets and Suns in big fashion. Those were away games, and they have not been good away, which is why they're probably, eyeing that 4th seed. They want, their first playoff series since 2013 to be home court advantage, MSG. And the New York Knicks have done very well to get there. They are only 5-3 in May, so it's not incredible, which is why they're 10th. They're not any higher, but they are still playing extremely good basketball. You got Julius Randle playing some of his best basketball over his last couple games. Against the Charlotte Hornets, he had a triple-double, 33 points, 10 rebounds, 13 assists. First Knick to have a 30-point triple-double since Carmelo back in 2013. And against the Spurs, literally his last 2 games, he had 25 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists. RJ Barrett also contributing, and so you're getting some great basketball from your star players. And then when you talk about the Miami Heat, they're 8-2, or I guess now it'll be 7-3 in their last 10 games. They've been playing very well. They were on a 4-game win streak before this loss to the Bucks, without Jimmy Butler, I should say. And one thing I didn't know about the Heat and Jimmy Butler, I should say, is that they played the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks 6 different times this season. Jimmy Butler did not play in a single one of those games. I don't know if that's an advantage for the Heat or not, but I think that the Heat will have a huge run in these playoffs. I'm not just saying it as a Heat fan. I mean, maybe partially, but I just feel like the Heat have the recipe to beat some of these big teams. Like the Bucks, I think they can beat the Bucks. Obviously, they need to have Jimmy Butler. They need to have Bam Adebayo not playing like a pansy. Like he did in this game today. But I think the Miami Heat can certainly make some noise in the playoffs. They come in at number 10, tied with the Knicks, because I just feel like they're playing that well. At number 9, we have the Denver Nuggets, who have been absolutely, just shocking people by playing as well as they have without Jamal Murray. I mean, you shouldn't be that surprised. I mean, Jokic is an MVP. He is the MVP of this season. But then you also got Michael Porter Jr. stepping up in such a big way for them since he's been out with an injury, since Jamal Murray went out. He's averaging 19 points a game, 7 rebounds on 54% from the field and 44% from 3. Killing it. Absolutely killing it. I love Michael Porter's game. Recently saw a highlight reel of him. The kid can absolutely make buckets. He can also defend a bit. He's super long, very agile. He's quick. He's athletic. He's got a lot of good things to his game. And that's why the only thing is I can't put them any higher than 9 because they're missing their second best player. If you had Michael Porter Jr. playing this well and you had Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic MVP, Denver Nuggets would be title contenders this season. But right now, it only puts them at number 9 because there's a team ahead of them that has just been killing it in the month of May, and that is the Atlanta Hawks. They come in at number 8. They have been so good since Nate McMillan has come in. I mean, he turned around their season. Absolutely. I mean, they're 6-1 in the month of May, with that only loss being against the Pacers. Tough loss to the Pacers there, but still, you got Bogdanovich playing absolutely out of his mind over the past few weeks. You add that to Trae Young, John Collins, all that can average 25 points. You got Kevin Huerter playing great, Gallinari, Lou Williams adding very solid production off the bench. And the fact that they still don't have DeAndre Hunter says a lot. It says a lot. I mean, he just played. He's been playing 6. He played the last 2 games. Hasn't really done much. He's 4 for 14 over those 2 games. It's there's obviously a little bit of rust. They can afford that because they're playing very well, but they're gonna need his defense and scoring abilities in the playoffs. But they are a threat. I do believe they will, they could possibly make it out of that first round, man. They are a good team. The only thing is that they're not that great defensively. They allow 111 points a game, which is still average. I think that's middle of the pack. Yeah, I believe that's like middle of the pack, which isn't terrible, but their offense can certainly score 113 points per game. That gives them a +2 net differential, and they're a very dangerous team. So I certainly think they have a chance in any series. I even think against the Philadelphia 76ers, they can give them a run for their money. Don't expect them to beat them, obviously, but still the Hawks are a dangerous team. That's why they come in at number 8. At number 7, we have the Los Angeles Lakers. And the Lakers, obviously, they finally got LeBron James back. He looked great in his first game back against the Indiana Pacers. Anthony Davis has been doing some incredible things. He had a 42-point game recently against, who was it? No, it wasn't against the Knicks. Was it against the Suns? I think it was against the Suns. Yeah, he put up 42 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. Anthony Davis is officially back. LeBron James is looking back. I just can't put him any higher than 7 because those are the only 2, in my opinion, that really give this team a chance to win. I like Schroeder a bit. He's very solid point guard. Their starter. He's a good point guard. What is the average? Is he their starter? Yeah, I'm sure he's their starter. Or is he coming off the bench? Oh, yeah, he didn't play that game. But, no, he's definitely their starter. He's averaging 15 points a game this season, 6 assists, 3.5 rebounds, but not on very solid averages. 44, just under 44% from the field, 33% from 3, 1.2 steals. So he's a solid two-way player, very crafty player. But I just think the Lakers, they will live and die by what LeBron and AD does for them. And obviously, you also got to look at Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He does a bit for them as well. Andre Drummond's going to be a big piece. Wesley Matthews, Caruso, Kuzma, obviously he's going to be big off the bench. I just think that there's a little bit too many inconsistencies with this team. And obviously, LeBron James, yes, he looked great in his first game back, but he's going to need a little bit of time to get back into that regular LeBron James rhythm. So that's why I have him at 7 heading into the playoffs. Normally, they'd be top 5 for sure. Maybe top 4, but right now I have him at number 7. At number 6, we have the LA Clippers. Now, the Clippers have been a very good team this season. Very, very good. They got a, plus 6.3 net rating, which is second best in the entire Western Conference. They've looked very, very good. But in the month of May, they have dropped a couple games that make you kind of scratch your head a bit. Big game against the Nuggets with seeding implications. Both Kawhi and Paul George play. And you had Paul George put up, you had Kawhi Leonard put up 16 points on only 12 attempts. Just not playing the way you would expect him to. Rondo has been a very solid addition. Batum didn't play well that game. Even DeMarcus Cousins has been a good addition to that team. And so they got depth and they got the stars. But there's just some times where I feel like they're just not producing when they need to. Obviously they lost to the Rockets recently. That's a bad loss. Obviously it was without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. So you can't really blame them too much. They didn't even have Patrick Beverley or Reggie Jackson playing. So they had a lot of their guys out. But DeMarcus Cousins, Serge Ibaka was playing. Luke Kennard was playing very well. Jay Scrub had a decent game, 23 points to lead the team. Even Rondo had a very good game, 13 assists, 3 turnovers. Looking very solid heading into the playoffs. So, yes, the Clippers are one of the best depth teams. They have the best depth, in my opinion. Not the best depth, but they have a very good complement of role players throughout that team. And then they got the stars in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Now, can they put it all together in a 7-game series? That's what we're going to have to wait and see. Right now, they're the 4th seed. Could possibly be the 3 seed at the end of the season. After Sunday, we'll have to wait and see. But I have the LA Clippers at number 6. But at number 5, I just spoiled it just a bit. We got the Brooklyn Nets. And some people are probably thinking, what are you talking about? How are the Brooklyn Nets 5th? Behind a couple teams. I just feel like there's a couple teams there that have just been a little bit better than they have in the month of May, just kind of gearing up for those playoffs. The Brooklyn Nets are only 4-3 in the playoffs. They lost 2 games in a row to the Milwaukee Bucks, though both of them were away. They were close games. First one, they lost 117 to 114. The other one, 124 to 118. But they also lost a game to the Mavericks. They beat the Bulls twice. They beat the Nuggets, and they beat the Spurs. Not a lot of great wins there. The Nuggets one is a solid win, but the Bulls and the Spurs, that's not big. They do take on the Cavaliers end of the last game of the season. But it's just been a little bit of inconsistencies. And yes, they do have their guys back. I'm pretty sure Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving are all playing. But James Harden does have to get a little bit of rust off. But still, they're an incredibly talented team. Blake Griffin's starting for them now. And you got Nicholas Claxton getting minutes. The odd man out, I believe, is DeAndre Jordan now. He has not been getting minutes for a while. He is out of the starting lineup and even out of the rotation, which is what I was hoping for because Nicholas Claxton is much better than DeAndre Jordan is right now, which he showed in that last game against the Bulls. He had 10 points, 8 rebounds, 3 blocks even? Yeah, and 3 blocks. So he gives you that interior presence that they need and some solid scoring and rebounding. So the Brooklyn Nets come in at number 5. Very solid team, but just a couple inconsistencies that I've been seeing in the month of May. Number 4, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. And the Milwaukee Bucks, despite not being the number 1 seed, are definitely a better team this season. The addition of Jrue Holiday has really transformed them. It's allowed them to do a lot of different things offensively. It's given them a juggernaut defensively, a guy that you can literally put on any of the team's best perimeter player, and he will lock him down. That's how good he is. He's going to be an all-defensive player this year. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They just finished defeating the Miami Heat. They beat the Pacers, the Magic, the Wizards, the Rockets, the Nets twice in this month. That makes them now 7-1 in the month of May. They take on the Bulls for the last season to make them 8-1 heading into the playoffs. So just very, very solid play from the Bucks. They're looking very scary heading into the playoffs. No one wants to be that 6 seed right now. Right now it's looking like the Heat. I'm not happy about that. But yeah, the Milwaukee Bucks, very, very dangerous team. And that's why they come in at number 4. I mean, Giannis, Chris Middleton, Jrue Holiday, Brook Lopez has been very solid. Bobby Portis off the bench has been very, very good. Brian Forbes has been good. Dante DiVincenzo has been solid as well. And Pat Connaughton. They got some pretty good depth, but I feel like in the end it's all going to come down to Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Jrue Holiday. Those are the guys that need to perform at a high level, especially Giannis Antetokounmpo, for them to really realize their dreams in the playoffs and make it to the finals. And that's why they come in at number 4. At number 3, we have the Phoenix Suns. Now, the Phoenix Suns have also been playing great down the stretch, 7-3 in their last 10 games. They recently took on the Spurs, defeated them 140-103, really put a beating on them, especially those 3 games before that. With tight win over the Trailblazers, 118-117, but then 2 losses in a row. One to the Warriors, one to the Lakers, and they've been giving up a lot of points recently. They also have a loss to the Hawks where they lost 135-103. They have not been playing great defense over the last couple games, or pretty much in the month of March, I would say, because even in some of their wins, they beat the Cavaliers 134, but they gave up 118. The Thunder, they scored 123 on them, but they allowed 120. So there's some defensive problems that I'm seeing from the Phoenix Suns that we haven't seen all season long. I'm afraid we're going to see that in the playoffs. That's why they're just a notch behind this team. Ahead of them, still a great team, great offensively, great leadership on that team, great young talent, and great wing defenders, or great wing 3 and D players. So I think the Phoenix Suns are well equipped heading into the playoffs, but there's just been a bit of inconsistencies from them in May that makes me drop them to 3. And at number 2, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. Yes, they recently lost to the Miami Heat and looked very bad in that game. They also lost to the Pacers. But they are still a very, very good team. You got to remember, Joel Embiid has not been playing at the level that you would have expected of him. He's kind of taken his foot off the gas pedal towards the back end of the season. He really has. Like, you look over, like, I haven't looked over his last couple games, but let me actually do that right now. Joel Embiid, over his past couple games, he's put up 13 points, 6 points. Those are his last 2 games. He had 13 and 11 rebounds against Orlando. He had 6 and 2 against Miami. And he only had 9 field goal attempts in those 2 games. He also only had 13 field goal attempts against the Detroit Pistons in the game before that. He made 11 of them. But still, he's just not being as aggressive. He's kind of coasting heading into the playoffs, which you can't blame him. He wants to be fit. He wants to be healthy heading into the playoffs, which has been a very, very big question mark for Joel Embiid. But in the end, the Philadelphia 76ers are a very good defensive team. They can score in bunches. They got an MVP candidate in Joel Embiid, and that does a lot. I mean, they got a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Ben Simmons. They got a lot of options on that team. Tobias Harris has been huge for them. You got great shooting around those stars in Seth Curry, Danny Green. Shake Milton's been very solid this season. Matisse Thybulle gives you that defensive stalwart. They're off the bench. Dwight Howard gives you another big body that you can put inside. I don't know if Tyrese Maxey is going to get minutes in the playoffs, but he's been very solid as well. But they will want to see George Hill. George Hill is the guy that I think is going to make the biggest difference for this Philadelphia 76ers team. A point guard you can bring off the bench that can just settle things down for that second unit. In playoff basketball, you need those type of players. The Miami Heat thrived with Goran Dragic being a very level-headed player, and that's one of the main reasons why they made it to the NBA Finals. So George Hill will have to play a big role for this Philadelphia 76ers team. I think he will. They got all the tools. They got all the personnel. That's why they come in at number 2. However, at number 1, we got the Utah Jazz. And the reason I have the Utah Jazz at number 1 is because despite not having, Donovan Mitchell, they have been able to continue to play well and stick with the number 1 overall seed. I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to Jordan Clarkson, of course, Joe Ingles as well, Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, Royce O'Neal, Bogdanovich. All those guys are playing extremely well to keep this team afloat. But it's impressive that this team, it's an overall team that really carries it. So now you add Donovan Mitchell to that, this team's going to be a very hard out in the playoffs. Home court advantage for the entire playoffs, and I feel like this team's going to be dangerous. So watch out for the Utah Jazz. They're number 1 for a reason, and I think they're going to be extremely tough to beat in the playoffs. So as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I would really appreciate it. Thank you and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.